All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling IT governance and cybersecurity.
Sounds complex, right?
Can be, but we're going to make it super clear, especially for our board members out there, those of you in the public company world.
Definitely.
We've got this awesome guide, actually, from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka.
And the ISIC Sri Lanka chapter.
Yes. And the cool thing is it's made for directors.
Not tech wizards.
Right. So it cuts through all the jargon, gets to the stuff boards really need to know.
What I find fascinating is how they make these complex IT ideas practical for board oversight. It's really about giving directors the power to ask the right questions, making sure tech serves the business, not the other way around.
Exactly. We hear IT governance all the time, but what does it actually mean in the boardroom, day to day?
Both ISICA and IIA Global, they defined it around this idea of alignment. You could think of it like, imagine your company's tech strategy. It's a sheepdog, well-trained, herding your business goals toward success.
Okay, so it's making sure technology is working with the company, not just off doing its own thing, maybe even becoming a problem.
Exactly.
So why should boards care so much about this? What's in it for them?
Well, think about public companies. The stakes are high. Cybercrime, fraud, it's all getting more sophisticated. A strong IT governance setup, that's your defense.
Like, we see it all the time now, right? Data breaches, cyber attacks, reputations and bottom lines take a major hit.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond protection, too. Good IT governance helps you make the most of your IT investments. You're actually getting value for that tech spending. And it makes the whole IT situation more efficient, more accountable, more transparent. Crucial stuff for public companies.
And these guidelines, they don't just talk about what IT governance is, they give you questions to ask. It's like a cheat sheet for good oversight.
It really is. And you don't need deep technical knowledge to get it. They focus on the big picture. Like, what is the real role of IT in driving your core business?
Simple question, but man, that could spark some serious conversation in a board meeting.
Absolutely. It forces you to go beyond just, oh, IT is there to support us, and think, how can it drive our success? Another one that hits home for public companies is, are your IT investments actually delivering what you expected? And the kicker, how do you know?
Right, because we can't just throw money at tech and hope for the best. We need to measure that ROI. And the guidelines actually help with that.
They do. And they also push boards to think about how agile their IT departments are. Can they adapt fast to new opportunities, new threats? Because the world moves so fast now, if your tech can't keep up, you're in trouble.
That's so true. Things change so rapidly now. Makes me think of that Nolan McFarlane strategic impact grid.
Oh, yes.
That was in the material. It helps you figure out, how involved the board should be in IT governance.
It's all based on how crucial tech is to your strategy.
Exactly.
The strategic impact grid is great because it recognizes not all companies use IT the same way. Some use it defensively, just keep things running smoothly. Others use it offensively.
Lead ahead. And depending on where your company falls on this grid, the board's involvement in IT governance, that needs to change too.
It does. And the grid helps you see these 4 modes of IT governance: factory, support, turnaround, and strategic. Each mode has its own quirks, its own implications for how the board oversees things. The big takeaway: there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
It's all about finding what's right for your company, your situation. So, okay, we need boards involved in IT governance, but how much depends. But what is good IT governance? How do we even start to grasp this huge idea?
That's where the 5 domains of IT governance come in. It's like a roadmap guiding boards on what to focus on. First up, strategic alignment. Make sure your tech goals are in line with your company's big picture mission.
We talked about this, but it seems like the absolute core of this whole thing.
It is. It's like, is everyone in the company rowing the boat in the same direction? Then we've got value delivery. This is all about ensuring that your IT investments actually add value. They're not just a drain, not some tech vanity project.
So not just having cool gadgets, but making sure they actually help the company succeed. What's next?
Performance management. This is about tracking how effective your IT is.
How do we know it's doing what it should be?
Exactly. Are our systems reliable? Are we getting the performance we expect? Are those IT investments paying off?
It's holding the IT department accountable, essentially.
Yeah. Yes. Then there's resource management.
Making the most of your people, your tech, your budget.
Right. Do we have the right people in the right roles? Are we using our tech efficiently?
Because those IT resources, they're often limited, right? Gotta be smart.
Exactly. And finally, risk management. This is critical for public companies, especially now. It's all about identifying, assessing, and tackling those IT risks, especially the ones tied to cyber threats. Those are getting more sophisticated all the time.
That's a big one. Okay, so we've got these 5 domains. How do we put them into action? Talking about them is one thing, but how does a board, especially if they're not tech experts, make sure this is happening in their company?
That's where these guidelines get really practical. They have these checklists that take those domains and turn them into actions. Think of them as a quick guide to get started.
I do love a good checklist. They make things less scary. What kind of checklists?
There's the IT governance checklist. It covers all 5 domains, everything from strategic alignment to risk management. It's got items that any board member, even without deep tech knowledge, can relate to. For example, it prompts you to review how your IT investments are doing. Are you getting those promised returns? Are they aligned with your goals?
We need to know those investments are worth it, not just burning money. What else?
Another key item is making sure your IT policies are communicated clearly throughout the company. Because the best policies in the world, if nobody knows about them, they're useless.
So true. Everyone needs to be on the same page.
Exactly. And then there's the cybersecurity checklist. It's all about helping boards assess how prepared they are for cyber threats.
That's so crucial now, the consequences of an attack, especially for public companies.
Devastating.
So what kind of things does this checklist cover?
It has questions that can get some serious conversations going at the board level. For example, do you have a dedicated chief information security officer, a CISO?
Yeah, having a CISO is becoming more and more important as cyber threats evolve.
Absolutely. It also asks, have you defined your company's cyber risk appetite? In other words, how much risk are you willing to take on?
Because you can't eliminate all risk, but you can manage it.
Right. And maybe the most important question on this checklist, are your directors receiving regular cybersecurity training? Because even with the best defenses, if the people at the top aren't aware of the threats, you're vulnerable.
So give them the knowledge they need to make good decisions, oversee this crucial area effectively. Okay, we've covered a lot. The importance of IT governance, the domains, the strategic impact grid, and these really handy checklists. But how does all of this fit into the bigger picture of running a public company?
That's a great question, and it leads us right into King IV.
King IV, tell me more.
King V is this well-respected corporate governance framework. It gives guidelines for good governance across the whole organization.
So like the big umbrella. And IT governance falls under that.
Yes. And the guidelines pick out some key principles from King V that relate to tech and information governance. One big one is that the board, they need to take responsibility for setting the direction for IT.
Makes sense. IT can't be off doing its own thing.
Right. It needs clear direction from the top, aligned with the company's goals. King V also emphasizes integrating tech and information risks into the organization's overall risk management. So it's not just, here's the IT risk over here, it's part of the whole picture.
Which is so important for public companies. One incident can have a ripple effect across the entire business.
Absolutely. King V also highlights the need for the board to oversee tech and information management, including things like cybersecurity, business resilience, and the ethical use of tech.
Having that big picture view.
Right.
Making sure tech is being used in a way that aligns with the company's values. Especially important when you're in the public eye.
Exactly. And finally, King V says the board should consider getting independent assurance on how effective their IT setup is.
Like a third-party check.
Yes, to make sure everything's running as it should. This gives an extra layer of confidence, accountability, which is crucial for public companies. Now, this brings us to another critical area, especially with all the new legislation, like the Personal Data Protection Act.
You're talking data protection and privacy, right?
Yeah.
Huge for public companies handling tons of sensitive data. A breach would be a disaster.
Absolutely. It's not just about following the law, it's about trust. If people don't trust you to protect their data, they won't do business with you. Simple as that.
So what do the guidelines say about data protection and privacy?
They have this helpful checklist to guide you through the key things to consider. First, understand the data protection laws and regulations that apply to your company.
Which can be tricky if you're operating in multiple places, right?
Correct. It is, and it's constantly changing. It's important to have expert help on this. The guidelines also highlight the importance of having a dedicated data protection officer, someone overseeing your data protection program, making sure you're complying with all those rules, and of course, having a clear data protection strategy and program is essential.
Not just policies written down, but a real program that covers everything about data protection.
Exactly. And they really stress data security and privacy throughout the entire life cycle of that data.
So from the moment it's collected to the moment it's gone, it's protected.
Precisely. That includes things like having the right security measures in place, both technical and organizational, getting consent for data collection, having a clear plan for what happens if there's a breach.
Which, unfortunately, can still happen.
Yeah.
Even if you do everything right.
It's true. So it's a comprehensive approach, essential for building trust, mitigating risk in today's data-driven world. But I know there are all these different IT governance frameworks out there.
It's a lot. Where do you even start?
It is a lot, but you don't need to become an expert in all of them. The source material highlights 5 that are commonly used.
Lay it on me.
Okay. First, ISO 38500. It's all about establishing clear responsibilities for IT governance, having a solid IT management plan, and making sure you're following the rules. It's a good foundation.
Setting the ground rules and sticking to them. What else?
Then there's the ISO IEC 27000 family of standards. This one is all about information security management.
So if we're worried about data breaches, cyber attacks, this is the one.
Exactly. It helps you build a strong information security management system, or ISMS. That's crucial for protecting your data. Then there's COBIT. That stands for Control Objectives for Information and Related Technologies.
Yes.
It's all about aligning your IT with your business goals, making sure it's actually delivering value. It gives you a set of controls, best practices for managing enterprise IT.
So IT isn't just a cost, it's actually helping the company succeed.
Precisely. And it stresses that IT governance involves the whole organization, not just the IT department. Next, we have the ITIL framework. Stands for Information Technology Infrastructure Library. This one's all about standardizing and improving how you deliver IT services.
Making sure IT is actually serving the users.
Exactly. It's about making sure IT is a partner to the business, not a roadblock. And lastly, there's CMMI, or Capability Maturity Model Integration. It's all about assessing how mature your processes are, helping you get better. It's great for continuous improvement.
And CMMI, it can be applied to all sorts of things, not just IT, right?
Right. It was initially for software development, but it works for a lot of organizational processes, including IT governance.
So you can see where you stand, where you need to improve.
Exactly. We've covered a lot of information, but it's important to remember IT governance isn't about memorizing frameworks or ticking boxes. It's about creating a culture.
A culture of what?
Accountability, transparency, and always getting better when it comes to how your organization uses tech.
And for board members of public companies, that responsibility, it's even bigger.
It is. You're accountable to your shareholders, yes, but also to the public. The decisions you make about IT governance, they can have a huge impact, good or bad.
So as we move on to the next part, keep those stakeholders in mind. Think about how the choices you make about IT governance affect your company's reputation, its finances, its ability to serve its customers and the community.
In part 2, we'll dig into real-world examples of companies putting these principles into practice. It's going to be fascinating.
Stay tuned. Welcome back. Part 1, we really dug into why IT governance matters, especially for public companies.
It's not just a tech thing.
Right, it's a business thing. So now, let's get practical. What does good IT governance look like out there in the real world?
You know, the companies that really get it, they understand IT is strategic.
It's not just a cost center.
Right. It's woven into their goals.
They're using it to get ahead, not just keep things running. Any examples come to mind?
Tons. Think about a traditional bank.
Right.
They've got all these fintech startups nipping at their heels.
So much competition.
To stay in the game, they might go all in on mobile banking apps.
Makes sense.
Online loan platforms, even AI-powered financial advice. They're using IT to change how they do business, not just prop up the old ways.
They're not just reacting, they're using it to leapfrog ahead.
Yeah.
That's smart. But tech is only one piece, right?
Yeah.
What about the people side of this, the board's role?
Oh, that's huge. The successful companies, their boards are engaged.
They're not just sitting back.
No, they're in those IT discussions, asking the tough questions, holding management accountable. They're not just approving budgets. They're digging into the details, making sure those IT investments align with the strategy.
So you need a board that's willing to challenge things, push for better IT practices. But what if a board isn't super tech savvy? How can they oversee something this complex?
That's where those questions from the guidelines come in, the ones we talked about in part 1.
It was like a cheat sheet.
They are, and they work regardless of your tech background. It's about asking things like, are we measuring the actual impact of our IT projects?
Not just, did we finish it?
Right. Do our systems have the flexibility to adapt? when the market changes, are we attracting and keeping the best IT talent?
You need that strategic mindset. The technical stuff you can get help with, but that big picture thinking, that's key. And I imagine risk awareness is crucial too, especially cybersecurity. How are companies building that?
Communication and training. It can't just be about policies.
Everyone needs to understand.
Exactly. From the CEO down to the intern, they need to get why cybersecurity and data protection matter.
It's everyone's job.
Right. Regular training, internal newsletters, even those fun awareness campaigns, it all adds up.
Make it part of the culture.
Oh.
And I bet companies are getting better at measuring how they're doing too.
Oh, absolutely. They're not just setting goals, they're tracking progress.
Using data to make decisions.
Exactly. You can't just say, we want to improve cybersecurity. You got to define what that means, track it.
Be specific.
A lot of companies use the balanced scorecard. It helps you measure performance beyond just the financials.
So the bigger picture.
Right. Things like customer satisfaction, internal processes, employee growth. IT can influence all of that.
It's more holistic.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about what good IT governance looks like. What are the benefits companies actually see when they get it right?
Risk management is a big one. Companies with strong IT governance, they're better prepared. They can spot those risks, assess them, and deal with them.
Especially those cyber threats.
Exactly. This means fewer breaches, fewer disruptions, less stress all around.
That peace of mind, it's valuable. No board wants to be in the news for the wrong reasons. But are there other benefits besides just avoiding disasters?
Oh, yeah. Efficiency goes way up. When IT is working well, aligned with the goals, it streamlines everything.
Processes get smoother, things get automated.
You free up resources for other priorities.
You're not just doing things right, you're doing the right things with technology.
Yeah.
No more IT projects that nobody uses.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the competitive advantage. In today's world, the companies that really leverage technology, they win.
They can adapt fast, innovate, deliver amazing customer experiences.
Exactly. But here's the thing, IT governance, it's not a one-and-done thing.
It's a journey.
It is. You got to keep learning, adapting, improving as technology changes and your company's needs change.
Continuous improvement.
That's where we'll pick up in part 3. We'll look at organizational structure and how to keep getting better at IT governance.
All right, welcome back. We've spent the last 2 parts of this deep dive talking about why IT governance matters and what good IT governance looks like in action. But before we wrap up, we got to talk about structure. How companies actually organize this whole IT governance thing.
Absolutely. The structure, it's the foundation. It can make or break how effective you are.
Like building a house, right?
Yeah.
Bad foundation, the whole thing falls apart. So what are some common ways companies structure their IT governance? What works, what doesn't?
Well, one approach is centralized.
Central?
It's like having one control tower for all your IT decisions. A committee, a council, they're in charge.
Everything goes through them. What are the advantages of that?
Control. Consistency.
Yeah.
You know everyone's working toward the same goals. There's a clear process.
Makes sense. Especially for public companies, right?
Absolutely. They need to show their stakeholders they've got a handle on things. But there's a flip side.
There's always a flip side.
Too much centralization, it can get slow, bureaucratic. Decisions get bogged down in layers of approval.
And that's a killer in the tech world.
It is. It kills innovation, that agility you need to keep up.
So what's the other option?
Decentralized.
Okay, the opposite.
Basically, you spread out those IT governance responsibilities, different business units, departments, they get more say.
Like each department has its own mini control tower.
Exactly.
So what's good about that?
It can really boost innovation. Each unit can tailor solutions to what they need.
That flexibility sounds great. But I bet there are downsides too.
Oh, yeah. The big one is consistency.
Or lack of it.
Different departments doing their own thing. You can end up with duplicated efforts, wasted resources, even security risks if everyone's not on the same page about data protection.
So it's about finding that balance, right? Enough freedom to be responsive, but not so much that you lose control.
And that's why a lot of companies go for a hybrid model.
The best of both worlds.
Exactly. A bit of centralized, a bit of decentralized. It's about finding that sweet spot.
What works for your company? Your size, your complexity, your culture? It's not one size fits all.
And it's got to be flexible.
Because things change.
Constantly. Your company grows, the market shifts, tech advances. You got to adapt.
That brings us back to continuous improvement. How do you build that into your IT governance?
Measurement. Set those metrics, track your progress. What gets measured gets managed.
So set goals for cybersecurity, data protection, IT project success, then hold people accountable.
Exactly. But how do you know you're setting the right goals in the first place?
Yeah, good point.
Feedback. Talk to your stakeholders. Not just IT, but business leaders, the people actually using the tech, even your customers.
Get that 360 view.
See what's working, what's not, where you can improve.
And make sure people feel safe speaking up, even if it's not all sunshine and roses.
Exactly. And don't just collect that feedback. Use it. Analyze it. Be ready to change based on what you learn.
It's a constant loop, right? Feedback, improvement, feedback, improvement.
That's continuous improvement in a nutshell. And it's crucial for IT governance.
Especially in today's world. So much complexity, so much change. All right, as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the big takeaways?
For our board members, for anyone involved in running a public company, the message is clear. IT governance, it's not just an IT issue, it's a business issue. It's about making sure technology helps you achieve your goals, protects what's important, and lets you deliver value to everyone who matters.
Not just avoiding those scary headlines. It's about using tech to create opportunities, innovate, build a stronger business.
Exactly. And while there are frameworks out there to help you, the most important thing is that mindset. Continuous learning, being ready to adapt, and always striving for excellence.
This deep dive has been a great journey through IT governance, the why, the what, and the how. But like we've been saying, it's a journey. Technology keeps changing, the challenges and opportunities change right along with it.
So keep exploring, keep learning, keep those conversations going in your organizations.
Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.